Hello everybody, I'm InTheLittleWood, also known as Martyn. Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Minecraft. Today is the beginning of a very different set of videos. So over the past 2 weeks, I've been learning how to develop for the Bedrock edition of the game. So this is the version that you'll find on mobiles, tablets, consoles, and even on the PC as well. Not to be confused with the other version on PC, which we all know and love, which is Java. This one actually unifies all platforms so everybody can play together. So I've made some really swift progress through this, thanks to a bunch of individuals in my live stream chats, many of them from the Blockception and Nox crew teams, as well as many others, and they've essentially schooled me really quickly. And if I didn't have their help, then I wouldn't have made the same progress. It would have taken me well over a month as opposed to like a week or two, and it's because a lot of the documentation that's out there is very overwhelming to look at, or it's really difficult to find in the first place. There's not really too much in the way of guide videos out and about, so I thought, why not start a series going through every part of Bedrock and showing you how to create custom blocks, creatures, animations, all that sort of stuff. And I think we should just get started. And just quickly to address the elephant in the room, I mean, it even has kind of a trunk. This, everybody, is Feedertron. This is my little robot boy that I've made. And basically, you feed him items in a mini game that I'm hopefully going to be publishing on the marketplace in the coming weeks. I'm sure in the description of this video, it'll be before the fold. And you can go and get this map if you want to, if it's eventually out. But for now, just wanted to show you something a bit more advanced that I've put together, just so it's kind of like, these are my credentials. I can actually make things. Anyway, let's get started. So the first thing we're going to want to do is download a program called Blockbench. The website looks a little bit like this, and essentially Blockbench is a 3D voxel model editor. So you can create anything that your mind can come up with, just as long as you've got enough cubes. It's a really nice bit of kit. Some other people might have come across Model Bench in the past as well, both of which are used to import things into Minecraft, whether that be Java or Bedrock as well. And it's a really nice bit of kit. So the link is in the description to that, and once you've installed it, we can get started. So first thing we want to do is want to go ahead and create a new project. So if we go to new and we go to, say, Bedrock model, we can do that, and we're going to create an item, and we're just going to call it custom. And then also for the model identifier, I always put the same word as I do for the file name, just for consistency's sake. Makes life a little bit easier, and you'll be good to go. Leave all of these other settings exactly as they are and hit confirm. Then the next thing you want to do is you want to go ahead and create a cube. So over here on the right hand side, you've got a plus button, you add a cube, and now we have a tiny little cube which is 1 by 1 by 1. So if you were doing a texture for it, it would be 1 pixel on each side. And just quickly before we move on, just to let you know the camera controls when you're on this screen, if you click anywhere and hold down the left mouse button, then it moves the camera around like that on a rotation, and then you can move it more as like a physical plane by holding right click and moving the mouse around. You may accidentally press the tab button on your keyboard as well sometimes, and you'll get this split view like this. Or you might actually hit a number on your numpad on your keyboard, and it gives you like all of these different like hard directions, like top, down, left, right, back, forwards. If you ever want to get out of this, you can either press the number 1 on the numpad, or you can right click anywhere on the screen, go to angles and click initial angle, and then you're back to your free roaming, moving around. And you can also use the mouse wheel to zoom in and out too. So the block we're going to create today is going to be a really simple full-sized block. So the first thing we want to do is we want to come over to size after clicking on cube, and we just basically want to pop in 16, 16, and also 16, because that is the standard size of a Minecraft block, and you can see that this grid is working to the same size. And then there is a fourth option on the size information over here, and that is inflate. This is used very rarely, and I'd be careful when you're using it, particularly if you're putting textures on a block. Basically, if I was to say put 10 in there, it would basically add 10 blocks on every single direction and make it much bigger. And the same as well if I did say -5, it shrinks it down, and the textures are somewhat smart in Blockbench, but if you don't need to do it, then don't. All right, so we've got our block. The next thing we want to do is move it around, and that is very simple to do. Across the top of the screen here, we've got a bunch of different movement keys, and the main ones we're going to use for today are going to be move, rotate, and I think that's about it. We could use pivot, but it's actually easier to do it in the numbers in the top right corner here. So press V on your keyboard, or the first tool, which is move, and you can literally just click and hold on this blue line, and away you go. You just pull around your screen and it moves everything onto the center of the grid, which is exactly where we want it. Now, this next step isn't actually necessary for a single block like this, but what I'm about to teach you will be really useful moving forwards for pretty much anything else you create that has numerous parts, or especially moving parts. So let's imagine for a moment that this block here is Steve's head, okay? At the moment, when we rotate it, the block is actually rotating like this, which isn't quite correct, is it? That's not how a Minecraft character's head moves. So what we want to do is we want to move this to the center of the block so we've got a better position. So it's really easy to do this. You can literally just mouse over to the top right, and next to the pivot point point locations, you can actually choose center pivot. So that's now clicked that and it's moved it to the center of the block, which by the way, if you want to see inside of a block a little bit easier, if you press the Z key, or Z as I would say, you can actually go into wireframe mode where you will only see the outlines of a block and not all of the color textures on it, which is really cool. Now, if I rotate this, still doesn't quite move like how a Minecraft head would, because the anchor or the pivot point is right in the center. So really simply, if we just come to the pivot points and on the y-axis, I just tell it to be at 0, that will basically mean that at the very center of this scene now, we have now got the block, and if you were to rotate it, that's much more like how you would rotate a Minecraft head. So say, for example, you had arms, you would probably put it at the top of the block, because obviously when you rotate arms, you want them to swing from that direction rather than at the bottom. So it's just a nice little bit to know. So our block is in position, and now it's time to make it look pretty. Let's go ahead and add a texture to it. So first and foremost, come over to the left-hand side of the screen, click on Create Texture, and then you want to give this the same name that you gave the beginning of your project. Just when everything's the same name, it's much easier to find and you won't get confused later on. Because if you've got a custom pack with, say, 40 custom blocks, you'd rather them all be very distinctly different. So that's what I recommend. You want to go ahead and click on Template as well, because that's super useful. What that will do is it will take all the blocks in your scene that you've created and put a unique color on each side of them. So say you were to immediately export this texture to Photoshop because you prefer editing textures in that program, then you'll know exactly which side of the block you're going to be painting to. Click on confirm, leave all of this exactly as it is, and then press confirm again. And now you can see, as I've mentioned, we've got green, blue, white, pink, yellow, and gray. So they're all a little bit different looking. Now it is time to start painting to this texture. So as I've mentioned, some people might go to here and click save as and then go and take it into Photoshop, but the great thing about Blockbench is you can do everything from within the software. So click on paint in the top right corner, and now you are in the painting tool. So let's go ahead and pick a color. I'm going to go for maybe more of a yellow. So on this bar on the right hand side of the screen, I can simply just like click and hold and drag up and down and then let go. And then around here, I'm then choosing all the other sort of like, you know, shades and values and stuff. So I'm going to just drag it right to the top corner and try and get the most yellow of yellows that I can. And now when I left click over here and drag, I can actually go ahead and paint a single line, which is really nice. Or you can click on individual squares as well, totally up to you. But what you'll notice is that if I increase this first value over here from 1 to 2, every time I click now, it's going to be 2 blocks. Do it one more time, everything's going to be 3 blocks big. It's really simple to understand what's going on here. The next one is a little bit different though. This next one is opacity. So if I change the opacity from 100, which is a solid color, if I go down to say 50, it will only be half as strong. So now you see it's slightly faded, and if you go right the way down to 10, then you'll notice that it is a barely noticeable difference. And this is a really good way of adding texture and kind of like more of like a, almost like, you know, a bit of a bumping to your textures if you want to have that. It's really cool. The place that I use it the most is I actually go ahead and use it on the edges of blocks. So if I go ahead and fill in the side of this so it's all one color, I go ahead and I get a color of black, I go for a pen size of 1, and I go for an opacity of maybe like 20. And now when I draw down the side here, you'll see how it automatically kind of like fades the color to be a little bit darker around the edge. And it looks as though you've actually chosen this color palette before you've come in, but it's a nice cheaty way of doing it. All right, let's move the opacity back up to 100. We're going to take the brush size to about 5, because then it's going to be nice and large. And then we're going to play around with this third one, which is called softness. Now, I haven't actually used this one that much myself, but I can see its application being really useful. So softness is basically how much blur is around the edge of what you're drawing. So I'm going to crank it all the way up to 100, maybe go down to a brush size of 4. And now when I do the stroke, you can see that everything is now starting to blur out a little bit. And if you want to sort of fill in the center again, then you can do that. You'll notice that like the center line wasn't a full opacity, even though it was set to 100. And that's because obviously it's blurring the area, but you can see already how you get these nice little sort of like extra pixels, which can really add a bit of depth to your drawing. Let's move on to the next tool. Now we're going to go on to the paint bucket. This one's pretty obvious. Whenever you click somewhere, it's going to completely fill in the space with the color that you have chosen. Now, this is good, but not in all cases, which is why we've got these extra little options just here. So at the moment, this is set to face, so any single side of the cube that I choose will be completely covered in this one set color. But there are some extra options as well. So you can say you can fill in the whole cube, like all 6 sides, with a single click. That one's kind of useful. Or if you would like it to be a case of only this slightly lighter blue changes, but this one here doesn't, you can do connected colors. And basically any colors that are touching will now transform. which is really, really nice. We like that. And then kind of the inverted version of that is you can then do it for all of that type of color across the entire page or the entire face. So say, for example, I was to take a line down the center here. If I just quickly draw a line down the middle, this light blue and this light blue are no longer connected. So if I was using the paint bucket tool and get that yellow back that I wanted, if I did connect to colors and click here, you can see that it only fills in one half of it. But what I can do now is if I change it to colors, this will match this single color with all the other of the same color on that same cube, and it will color in all of them at once. Simple. So the next tool we're going to look at is the eraser, which you could probably guess erases things. It gets rid of stuff. So if I do it across a lot of this face, you can see that all of it vanishes, and now I can see inside of the cube. You'll decide how you want to use that. If you're making this typical 16 by 16 block, chances are you don't want it to be see-through, you want it to be solid. But just so you're aware, if you do now draw here, don't panic that you're going to suddenly draw on this pink one just because you can see it. If you are drawing on this face, you are only drawing on this face. So see how I go like that and it fills in and there's nothing going on the pink. So that one is completely safe and protected. If you want that extra peace of mind, you can actually draw directly onto the texture on the top left side of your screen if you really wanted to. So there you go. The next tool is the color picker, and this one, again, pretty self-explanatory. Wherever I click on the screen, it's going to take that color and put it into my pen. So literally clicking on like yellow, then blue, then darker green, then lighter green. You'll notice that my color picker up here is moving immediately between the bunch of them. So if I click on that one, then press B for brush, I will now have that color as my brush color. All right, let's move on to one of the more fun tools. This one over here is called Draw Shape, and there are 4 different options inside of here, and they're very simple to implement. So the first one is a rectangle. You hold down left mouse button, you drag along, and it fills that entire space with the color that you've chosen. Or if you only want to do the outline, you change it to rectangle hollow, you drag along, and it basically creates the outline for you. And then if you increase the size, that will make the line thicker on each end of it, which is a pretty handy thing to know. And then the only other parameter is opacity. Now there is a slight difference here in that the circle doesn't draw from where you start to where you end, it actually draws from the center. So let me show you an example. So if I click in the very top left corner and drag outwards, you'll see that it's going all the way out to there. Whereas if I say drew in the center and drag outwards, you'll then see how the circle goes from the middle. So we're not drawing from the top left to bottom right and then it's figuring it out in between. We're actually just adding a pixel on each side each time in order to do this. And a little extra tip as well regarding this is if you hold down left mouse button and then hold down left shift, that will keep everything completely symmetrical or completely even. So say, for example, for a rectangle, that will keep it as a square. All right, let's move on to our final paint tool for the day. And this one is the copy paste tool. So you won't actually be using this on the cube. You're going to be using this in the top left corner on the texture itself. So let's say, for example, I wanted to copy this here onto the back of the cube as well. So the back of the cube is yellow. So if I highlight over this blue and yellow space right here and simply just left click and drag, that will go ahead and actually move it along. If I wanted to get rid of this one entirely, I could do cut to completely get rid of it. And then if you do Control V to paste, then you can move it around as you'd wish, but it's totally up to you. Now, there are some extra options inside of here as well. So one of them would be rotate 90 degrees. So you can turn it sideways and just continue to do so around the entire circle. And then the other ones are to flip the texture as well. So let me go to, say, the pink side and we'll draw a little something on it. So say I was to draw, I don't know, the letter G like that, okay? And then let's go back over here with our tool. We're going to select the pink side. And then now I'm going to flip it vertically, so mirror X. And you'll notice that now the texture flips just like that, back and forth, which is kind of interesting. And then if I wanted to flip it upside down, you can mirror it on the Y-axis, and then it would look like that. And as soon as you finish the selection, it then goes from looking like a G to looking like an E. So there you go. There's your final tool. All right, well, it's an absolute mess, but we've created a texture for our block. Let's work on getting it into Minecraft. First up, you want to go to File, you want to go to Export, and you want to export your Bedrock geometry. So the geometry, just to explain, is the shape of your block. It's basically so Minecraft knows exactly what it's going to look like when you bring it into the game. It should automatically have the name that you've typed in earlier on with .geo at the end, so just hit save, and that's that one done. And then to save the texture, click on this little save disk right here, and it will have again the same name as you've set. Click on save, and you are all all done. So I'm sure like a lot of you, whenever I look at programming and coding, it always looks really confusing and a bit overwhelming because there are commas, there's apostrophes, there's brackets, curly brackets, square brackets. It's just too much. Honestly, it's just too much. But this program here is going to make your life so much easier, as it has for mine. So this is a program called Bridge. So if you want to click on the link in the description, scroll down the page and click on download latest version. On the next page, you want to go to setup exe for Windows, and I'm guessing DMG for Mac. Don't quote me on that. I don't have a Mac, so I can't check. And that will basically download the program. You'll run the program. Windows will say, hey, we're not too sure about this because it doesn't recognize the developer name. Just click on the more info button, which is just like, well, I say button, text at the bottom of the sentence, and then that will bring up a new button which says run anyway. Install it, and then we can get going. All right, welcome to Bridge, everybody. This might look confusing, but I promise you it is lovely and simple and nice and clean. So we want to get started by creating a project. So go up to the top left corner over here, make sure you clicked on this giant folder which is for behavior packs, and then you want to click on new project, and inside of here I'm just going to call my project custom block. For this thing I'm going to put custom block project, whatever you want to call it, and then we'll give it a description as well if we want to. So I'll just put made by Martyn. Nice and simple. And then the next option down here might be different for you if you're watching this video 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, but essentially it will always put you on the default version of Minecraft that is currently out in the public. I think actually at the moment version 1.16.200 is out for everybody, so I'm going to click on that and I'm going to hit create. So our project is created, and you might not have noticed, but you've just created a behavior pack. So very simply put, a behavior pack tells a block or a mob or whatever it is you've created, it basically how to behave, how to act. Whereas the resource pack that we'll create soon enough is going to tell it how to look. So let's get started inside of here. I want you to click on manifest.json. I want you to click on the arrow next to header, and then you've got all these other options right here. And this looks a bit scary and confusing, but it's really simple. The name here is basically the name that displays when you click on behavior packs, and it's right here. So you can see I already created one called custom block. So if I just call this one custom block and then maybe put BP, just so it's a bit different, and then in the description I'm just going to put again made by Martyn and hit enter, and away you go. So all you have to do is click on the yellow text, type it here, press enter, and then you're all done. Now, just before we leave this file, we do have to save it. So you'll notice the text at the top here at the moment is in italics. That means it's unsaved. So if you do Control and S, that will save it. Then you can close it down and we'll move on to the next step. So now we've got our project and we've given it a name. Let's go ahead and actually create our block. So go to new file. That's in the top left corner next to the new project button. And on this new window, we have got loads of things that we can create. We've got animations, animation controllers, biomes, and then finally, we've got block right about there. Just as an FYI as well, this is all alphabetical. So, you know, it goes entity, feature rules, function, item. So it's a lot easier to find what you're looking for. Pop in the same name that you've used all the way through the program so far. So that's going to be custom for me. And then we're going to click on templates and go for a blank block. Hit create, and we've got a brand new document. The first thing you want to do is just click on this little light bulb, and that will automatically put the version number into the code for you without you even having to think. Then you want to click on Minecraft block, you want to click on description, and then we have the identifier. So the identifier, really simply put, is the name of the item in the game. So when you do your /give command to give a player an item, this is the word that you will put in afterwards. I personally like putting a little MAR for Martyn at the front of it, and then the name of the item. So if you click on the word identifier, click on value down here, and it will try and suggest some things to call it, but ignore all of those. And I'm just going to put MAR, do a little colon, and I'm going to call it custom. Now, as I mentioned previously, a behavior pack tells a block how to behave. So these behaviors live inside of components. So the first one, let's make it really simple. We'll click on this menu on the bottom left corner after clicking components. And the first one is destroy time. So this is how long will it take for the player to break it with their bare hands. So you click on that button there, you'll notice immediately that everything jumps over to the right hand side. And if you click on this, you can now choose a number of seconds that it will take to destroy it. So I think a typical block is like 4. So we'll click on 4, and that's purple, which means it's correct, and it's done. And then you can just basically explore through all of these to your heart's content. There's lots and lots of things you can do. So we can have, say, explosion resistance, which means it won't get blown up by TNT. You can set the resistance really high. I think usually the scale goes from 0 to 1. So if I literally put a scale of 1.0, then that will hopefully mean that it won't blow up when TNT goes off. Another one that you might find useful as well is actually going to be map color. So if somebody is stood by your block, they open the map, and obviously you get the top-down view of the world. This actually tells you which color this block will be on the map, which is nice and simple. So I think our block was, what color was it from the top side of it? It was actually white and a gray. So I guess if I just kind of give it like a gray color with the same color picker that we've used before, dragging along here for the various shades as well, I think that will be good. Click away and you'll notice that it automatically updates. So I mean, these three components are nice, but they're not really that important. The one that really is important, or the two should I say, are actually the collision boxes. This is basically, you know, when you hover over an item in Minecraft and you see that kind of like very thin black line around the whole box, that is essentially what we're going to create. So click on the word components, come down to the bottom left corner and just start typing the word collision, and it will eventually show you the only two options that have that word in. Let's start with entity collision, and we've got that just there. Click on object again, and we're going to go for origin. Now this is really simple because now it breaks down into the X coordinate, the Y coordinate, and the Z coordinate. So click on object again, click on 0, and this is going to be your X coordinate. Now the really easy way to remember what to put inside of here is to go back into Blockbench, and all you're going to do is copy the numbers from this top row. So specifically for origin, you want -8, 0, and -8. So I'm going to go into here, I'm going to type in -8 and hit enter, and you'll see it goes purple. When you clicked on origin again, you click on here and press 1. I'm going to type in the value of 0, hit enter. Click on origin again, go to number 2, type in -8, and there you go. You've completely copied everything across. Now, you might have seen another sneaky little option there. When you click on entity collision, there's actually a value here which says false. So basically, if you want the player to be able to walk through the object at any time, then you can set that to false, and that basically means you can see it, but you can't touch it. So it's up to you whether you want to do that. Next thing we want to do is click back on entity collision though, and we want to go to object, and we want to go to size. So we've told the game where the block starts, but we've not told it how big the block is. So again, much like a moment ago, we go to 0, and this is again going to be the X coordinate, but this time we're going to be copying the size line, as you'd expect. So it's going to be 16, 16, and 16, because of course this is a full block. So I'm going to type 16 and enter, I'm going to press 1, and do 16 and enter, and we're going to do 2, 16, and enter. So there you go, that's our collision box, nice and simple. So now the player can actually bump into the block, but they won't actually be able to break the block if they're pointing at it. So what we need to do is we need to click on components, go back to here, start typing collision again, and then you want to go for pick collision. And then inside of here, you're literally doing the exact same thing as before. So you're going for 0, -8, you're going for 1, 0, you're going for 2, which is your Z axis, and you're putting -8. Oh, I've put -8 plus. That's weird. And then, yeah, same again for the size. You want to go to size. 0 is going to be 16. 1 is going to be 16. And your Z coordinate is going to be 16. Finished. Oh, just one more actually that I think you might like. So if you click on components and type in the word light, this one here is quite good. So you can do light emission. So this will basically treat it like a glowstone block or a torch and actually say how much light it kicks out. So for now, if I click on value and choose, say, I don't know, 0.5, there you go. I'll do that. I'm going to do Control S to save this. And then we can move on to actually putting the texture onto the block. So you want to come to the top left-hand side here on the sidebar, click on Resource Pack, which is the next one down, and click on Create. And then much like before, you want to give it a name. So I'm going to go for Custom Block RP, because obviously it stands for Resource Pack. I'm just going to put Made by Martyn again, because that's what we did before. And there we go. We've got a whole new section over here to work with. And the first thing we want to do, just like last time, is we want to open the manifest, go to the header, and basically do the same thing as before. So Custom Block RP, and we want to give it a description as Made by Martyn. There you go. Control S to save it and close it away. And just before we do anything more in Bridge, we actually need to get the files on our computer into the right place. So over here in the top left corner, you can see the word Open in Explorer when you hover over this folder icon. So click on that, and that will create your folder right here. And this is basically the back end of Minecraft. So we want to go into our custom block folder. And then what I want you to do is I want you to go inside of textures and create a new folder called blocks, because obviously it's a block that we're giving a texture to. Go inside of that, and in here is where you want to put your texture file. So I'm just going to click and drag mine in. There we go, wonderful stuff. And then I want you to go all the way back out to this folder where you can see the manifest and the sounds and text folders and bits like that. I want you to create a new folder called models, and then inside of that folder create one called entity. And then basically inside of there is where your other file that you created earlier on your custom.geo, that's where that lives. And you'll be using this folder for basically everything. Whenever you have a mob that you want to give the body to, or you have a block that you want to give the shape to, all of those geo files will always live within this models entity folder. So now we can actually close this down. So get rid of that. We want to hit a quick refresh, and you'll now see that the models folder and the entity folder have all appeared, and within textures and blocks, you can see that your custom file is right there. So now we need to actually tell Minecraft to look for this texture, and this is really simple to do. So open the textures folder, open one called terrain_textures. So you want to start off by clicking on texture data, and then what you want to do is you want to pop in the word that you've been using so far. So for me, it would be custom, and then you want to click on textures, and then you want to click on 0, and then you want to click on path. So basically path is saying, where is it located on your computer? Where inside of this resource pack can I find your PNG file? So you click on path, and then you come over to value. And actually, if you've done this correctly so far, it will automatically give you a fill for what you can choose. So obviously it says textures, blocks, custom. We know that's correct. It's missing .png, but don't worry about that. It doesn't show those. And there you go. You should have something that looks a little bit like that. So it's the custom texture. The texture of it is located in the path of this folder and this name. So do a Control S and then close that bad boy away. And just before we leave the resource pack, there's one final thing that you'll want to do, and that is to actually give your item or block a name for when you're holding it in your hand or when you hover over it in your inventory. So for this, you want to open the texts folder, and then it might change depending on where you're from, but for me, it says EN_US, which is obviously American English language. And you can already see inside of here, we've got the pack name and description that we set earlier on. All I want you to do is go to the end of line 2, click on it, and then press enter to go to a new line. And if you type in the word tile, T-I-L-E, you'll notice that immediately it comes up with an automatic fill. So if you click on that, and it will fill it out for you, then put equals, and then you can put whatever you would like. So if I put Martyn's marvelous block or something like that, I don't know, I don't know how to spell marvelous, but I'm sure, let's go with that. Martyn's marvelous block. There you go. Do Control S, close that off, and that is now named. So we brought our texture in, we brought in the geometry, now we actually have to put it onto the block itself. So let's go back into the behavior pack, let's open our blocks file that we created earlier on, and all we got to do is click on components, and the first thing we're going to do is put the texture on. So we're looking for material instances. You click on that to add it as a component, and again, you open the object and it will give you a star. Click on that one. Click on add object again and click on texture. And then you'll notice that over here at add value for texture, it's got your automatic word that you created a moment ago. Nice and simple. And then you'll notice it's gone straight back up to star. If not, you just need to click on it yourself. Click on add object and you want to go for render method. And render method is basically how it will appear in the world. So if your block has no holes in it, you can't see through it, then you absolutely want to choose opaque, because opaque means impassable, can't see through it, you're all good. However, if your block has got a mixture of see-through parts and solid parts, then you can choose blend, or personally, I actually quite like using alpha test. I find that alpha test tends to have less problems than blend does, but it's totally up to you. So for today, we're going to click on opaque, and that is that bit done. I want you to click back on components just one more time for me, go into the little objects box, and I want you to type in the word geometry or geo. You'll notice that Minecraft geometry comes up. Add that one in as you would, and then inside of value, annoyingly, this isn't one that automatically fills in for you. So all you need to do is type in the word geometry, then put a dot, and then whatever word you've used for this whole time, just type that in after it. So you can do .custom if you're following me along, and then hit enter, and then it saved the value. If for some reason this isn't working and you're unsure as to why, you can check what this word is inside of your block. So if you go to your resource pack again, open the folder, and then obviously go in and find your geo file within models and entity. If you open this up, it will actually tell you the name right here. So literally on like the, 5th line of code or 6th, next to identifier, it says this. So you literally just want to copy and paste this into that field right here in order for it to work. And there we go, we've done it. We've actually finished creating our block. It was as simple as that. So let's jump into the game and see if we can see it for ourselves. So I'm going to create a world. It's going to be called block tutorial. I'm going to go ahead and make it a flat world just so I can see things a little bit easier. Cheat should automatically be enabled, which is good. I'm going to make it always daytime. And then this is the most important part, because as of recording this video, custom blocks like this and a few other features are only currently experimental. So if I click on this button right here to enable the holiday creator feature, pictures. That should work with everything that we're trying to do today. Next up, you want to go to behavior packs, you want to go to my packs, and obviously if this is your first time creating one, this will only have one inside of it. But here it is, you can see it says made by Martyn. I'm going to activate it, ignore the little warning about not being able to get achievements, and then if you've done this correctly so far, when you come to resource packs, it should actually activate the moment that you put the behavior pack in. If not, it probably means that you've taken a misstep somewhere along the way, so maybe backtrack, try it again, see if you can figure it out. But once you've done all of that, press create, and we're going to get into our world, and we should be able to spawn it in with a very simple command. So if I do /give player, and if I put in MAR, and then obviously finish the rest to say custom as well, then you'll see that in my hand, we have our custom block, and there it is. It appears in the world, and it is ugly, but we love it. Look at it. Now, one thing you're going to notice is that regardless of if I'm facing this way, or this way, or this way, that it keeps facing the same direction every single time. So you'll notice that always on this side of it, it's got all the pink. And like, look, even if I do like that and do it in a big old circle, the pink is always facing that side, which is kind of annoying, right? So if you want this block to face you when you place it down, so basically back in block bench, if you want that end there to be facing the player when you put it down in the world, there's a really quick fix for this. So go back to bridge. I want you to click on the extensions button in the sidebar, and then I want you to click on view extensions, go to components, and then usually the first one for me, but if not, you can just search down this list. There's only a couple of them, and you've got this one here called simple block rotation. So if you click on download, that'll immediately download it and install it for you. You can see the little tick once it's working. You can go back to your behavior pack, open up your block that you've created, and you're basically just going to add this in as a component. So click on components, and then you want to type in the word rotate, and the one you're looking for is rotate Y on place. Then you go ahead and add flip, and then you set a value of true, and then basically do Control S to save it, close it away if you'd like to, and then we've just got to simply reload the world in order to get this working. So out, back in, and then you'll notice that from now on when we place the block, it will always have the double line facing us, and you notice that the pink isn't on the same side every time. See how they're all different? So that's basically a quick fix for that. So if all you wanted to do today was create a regular 16 by 16 block and give it a texture, get it into Minecraft Bedrock and boot up the game, then you are done. But very quickly, there is more that you can do with the exact same method that I've taught you today, which will open up your, library way bigger. So the first thing you can do is you can actually create half blocks, or any size for that matter. So let's say, for example, I've created this slab, okay? I've done everything exactly the same, except when I created the geometry back in Blockbench, I did it as a height of 8 rather than a height of 16, which meant that when I was doing all the coding inside of here, I literally copy pasted this, and the only thing I changed was under size to 8 for the Y value, and that is all that I did different. It's literally the same thing, and this behaves exactly how a slab should behave. You go half up it, you go all the way up to that one, and away you go. Now, the only thing that I need to mention about this is that you couldn't create a staircase to do the same thing. You can create the staircase geometry, and that would be fine, but basically in Minecraft at the moment, you can only set one collision box per object. So obviously that means that I either have to choose the bottom half or the top half, but obviously then if I did it on the top half, I wouldn't be able to climb up. So this is technically a slab, but it looks like a stair. So you'll notice that I'll actually phase into this and then still go up the block. So most players won't notice this if they're just running straight at it. Like that, like when you run it, it doesn't feel any different, does it? It's just, oh, look, there's a staircase there. Okay, cool. I've gone up it. Not a worry. So it's basically about being mindful that that isn't a current capability, but it's kind of cool either way. And then the final thing that I did was I created a block that isn't a slab. It's not a block. It's actually just a really teeny tiny cube. So you place it down here and you can see that it's not very big whatsoever. But what I can do is I can pop down a couple blocks here. And if I just move this pig out of the way, I can probably walk over this sideways. And if you have a look, I'm no collision yet. But then all of a sudden, when I do actually touch it, I go to there. It's really, really cool. And you'll notice that even if you hover over it, perfect linings around it with the black border. And even on this one, perfect lines around it on the black border. It's really, really special. So you can get away with some really cool stuff with this currently. And I guess that's the final rule to let you know about, is you can't actually create a collision box any bigger than 16 by 16. So you can go as small as you'd like, but this is the biggest it can ever be. And the reason I wanted to mention this is because at the moment you can currently create blocks that are larger than a single cube in terms of its geometry and texture. But as we've said, you can only create a single collision box. So obviously this kind of object
object would be a bit strange if you were to try and walk into it, but a really smart solution is to simply get a barrier, which you can only get via doing, you know, /give @player and then typing the word barrier in. You can't actually get it from the creative menu. When you pop one inside, it will sit like that, and whenever you move away from it on your hotbar and you don't currently hold one, it will actually give it a full collision box. So I've got a vending machine that I created which was too wide and too tall, and I basically just popped down barriers in the other 3 empty cubes and it made it perfectly usable. So there's a nice little glance at everything that you can do currently in January 2021 with custom blocks. Of course, if there's any updates, any changes, especially when it comes to larger collision boxes, then I will be for sure making a video on that. If you did find this video helpful, then please let me know in the comment section below, and if you make anything, send it to me on Twitter @InTheLittleWood. I can't wait to see what you guys create with this sort of stuff, and I've got way more videos lined up in the future as well. We're going to be creating custom items, weapons, food, crafting recipes, we're going to do some animations, and we're even going to create a custom mob as well. So have an awesome one, remember to wash your hands and wear a mask, you filthy buggers. Ta-ra!